And this is not being done in secret. The entire world is watching. And the global south in particular is appalled. The question remains, if innocent civilians, including women, children, and United Nations staff, were being killed at this record rate in the developed world, how would the world's big powers have reacted? Not likely with euphemisms and platitudes. The double standards and continued resourcing of these ongoing violations of international law send a chilling message to the global south. And that message is this: there are some powerful people in this world who are of the view that a Palestinian child is less worthy of defense, protection, food, water, and life than another child. I am not of that view. The people of my country are not of that view. CARICOM is not of that view. And decent people all over the world, including in Israel, are not of that view. International law is not a tool of mere convenience to be muted for friends and trumpeted against enemies. Mr. President, international law is not a tool of mere convenience to be muted for our friends and trumpeted against our enemies. In this regard, Trinidad and Tobago has joined the call for an immediate, full, and complete ceasefire, and for the unconditional release of every single hostage. The truth is, there is no military solution to this conflict, as peace will only be
clip. I have Mufti Ibrahim Smith, who is the Amir of Darul Iftar in the Western Cape, to give us, a bit of a view on how can the world allow Netanyahu to be the Hitler of today's world and to become an open enemy of peace and humanitarian rights in this world. Mufti Saab, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, Yunus, mashallah, and to our listeners as well, Jazakallah khairan for hosting me this evening, G.
Mufti Saab, we're over a year into this war in Palestine and the atrocities and the manner in which Israel is indiscriminately bombing innocent Palestinians and civilians, both in Gaza and indeed other parts of Gaza. And the situation is getting bad to worse. America is complicit. They're doing virtually nothing about it. On the contrary, they're supplying more and more weapons, billions of rands in value. UK is also complicit. Europe is also complicit. And the problem we face is that lives are being lost, people are becoming homeless, children are becoming orphans, and the world is just watching. We're having some noises from other parts of the world. South Africa has taken Israel to ICJ. ICJ has ruled on the matter, and yet we have the Shaitan Netanyahu continuing with his inhumane actions in Palestine. Now, from an Islamic perspective, we have to look at it and sort of try to work out what is the outcome of these atrocities that are taking place in Palestine, and why is it that that the situation is allowed to prevail like the way it is. Mufti Saab, perhaps you can just give us a bit of an overview from an Islamic perspective.
First and foremost, I have to commend the speaker on the clip that you've just played. That excellent, well said from Trinidad and Tobago, taking the global south to task. If it was any other country or nation, then they definitely would have taken a more severe stance against Israel. But because it shows that the Zionist apartheid state of Netanyahu, they controlling NATO, they controlling the UN and all of these things. So that's why nothing is being done. And they also have a separate set of laws for Muslims and Muslim countries that they have for the rest of humanity. We should first acknowledge that with regards to the current genocide, it is the most well-documented genocide in the history of humanity. We're being fed footage on a daily basis. We see the atrocities. To some extent, we became desensitized also. Some of us just accepted it as a skirmish that's happening in the Middle East, But what it is, it's the prelude to a regional war. And I just pointed it out now in my majlis when I spoke, and I said that planes had to be diverted into a safety zone. And this is all a system. So now they're flying over Afghanistan, and they're netting Afghanistan $700 per flight that crosses their airspace because they fear for loss of life, the Europeans and all these planes. So they won't be successful this time around. Their plan is the establishment of Greater Israel. And Lebanon is now, and after Lebanon, it will be Jordan and Syria. They will also try to annex as part of the Zionist Greater Expansion plan. And, until they reach Saudi Arabia, that's the trophy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make them fail, Yunus, why? Because according to our beloved Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there will always be resistance in Sham, in that area is part of Sham, and the best of people will be in Sham. And right now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking shuhada from the people of Gaza, and we're sitting and watching. And at the same time, I have to say this, that if you are hoping that the ministers and the governments of these Muslim countries, that they will be assisting and supporting the Palestinian cause, then that is false hopes, because Kariyallahu bi'atham, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not permit them to support the Palestinian people this time because of their treachery, their lies, and being bedfellows of these satanic apartheid regime.
Now, Mufti Saab, the excuse that the Zionists are making in justifying their attacks is that they're dealing with Hamas, a terrorist group, and Hamas started attacking them first, and they're continuing indefinitely. And, they continue with the justification, and the West is now, falsely believing what's going on. But I noticed that the Arab world is complicit with them as well. United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and the Arab bloc, and they even allowing them airspace and providing them arms. Are they part of this treacherous environment?
Those lands don't belong to the Muslims anymore. I just mentioned in my majlis, and I sent it out, that the UAE is called on Somaliland, and I've asked them to set up an Israeli base so that the Zionist state can attack Israel from there, because it's close to Aden, which is close to Yemen. So they want to attack the Yemenis from there, and they're offering them peace, security, stability, and recognition of their government. This is now Somaliland. So they're all complicit. It's business as usual. I just returned from Turkey not too long ago. They're still trading with the Zionist state of Israel. That's why I said that there's no hope for us in them liberating Masjid al-Aqsa or Palestine. The war has been raging on for more than 1 year. They are the real terrorists. They're supporting, they're giving financial aid and support. We've seen one person performing Umrah also for them. We've seen a journalist from the UAE making dua that the Zionists must be granted victory also. So this is the low levels, because the UAE actually belongs to the apartheid state of Israel. It is their safe haven. It is their Swiss bank. That is where they deposit the bulk of their money. So we as Muslims, we shouldn't lose hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's victory is near. They won't survive, even the Saudis and anyone else supporting these people against our own brothers, their iman becomes questionable as well, G.
The reaction of these martyrs, in Gaza is eye-opening for the Muslim community, that they continue, with sort of their efforts. No matter not having any arms or ammunition, children are throwing stones, and we know the leader of Hamas recently was martyred, and his one hand he lost, the other hand he was throwing, some kind of a stick to bring the drone down, to say that in the name of Allah I'm throwing it. So the struggle, continues in Palestine, notwithstanding them losing everything, because they realize that the world and its contents is not equivalent to the wing of a mosquito compared to the hereafter. Your comments in that regard, Mufti Saab?
Yes, I just said now a 62-year-old pensioner, according to us, Sinwar Rahimullah Ta'ala, would be considered a pensioner fighting in the path of Allah and being martyred and fighting with the stick until the bitter end. There's a message in there for our youth never to give up and to fight oppression, And I just want to mention briefly that, Shapiro, the cartoonist, that he had a brilliant picture where he depicted a few Israeli Zionists standing behind the wall, looking at the pictures of hostages that has been taken hostage a year ago. And then on the opposite flip side, they had a picture of Palestinians that has been kept hostage by Israel for more than 75 years. They're moaning about hostages that has been captive for a year, but they're keeping an entire country hostage for 75 years. So, we don't need to be rocket scientists to evaluate all of these things. These people, they are born, in the moment they are born, they are facing bullets. I saw one X-ray picture now from a doctor who showed a projectile of a child who was shot in his head and how that bullet penetrated the brain and eventually killed the child. It was so sad to see that they're not notwithstanding the fact that they bombed at one camp, that a few people that were burning alive, and it was captured on video. People were screaming, how sad is that for us? And we couldn't even come to their rescue or assist and support them, Yunus. So it's very, very sad, We have to make extra effort, extra dua, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this point to intervene, because we as the ummah, there's absolutely nothing that we can do physically at this point in time besides making dua and supporting the Palestinian cause. And I'd like to point out also that they want us to believe the war is against Hamas. It is not against Hamas. Gaza is part of Palestine. Palestine is part of Sham. So it is a war against Sham. It's a war against Islam.
Now, Mufti Saab, basically, the struggle is about materialism for what it's worth. And obviously, from an Islamic perspective, when an individual passes on, he goes into the grave with nothing but his good amals. These Palestinians that are passing on, they basically are sort of getting the fragrance of musk in the highest stages of Jannah, because we know there's several stages in Jannah, and a martyr gets into the highest stages like that of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam and the Shuhada. So those that have been martyred are actually smiling and they're concerned about those that haven't been martyred. So from a materialistic perspective, we look at it as though, they lost their limbs, they lost their lives, they lost their livelihood, because the West has propagated their agenda of materialism, and the purpose of living in this world is to get materialistic pursuits. But in the end, it is about, conducting yourself in a humane manner, in a manner pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as shown to us by Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, to get success both in this world and in the hereafter. So, Mufti Saab, your message in terms of this particular war in Gaza, what is a message to mankind? Is it an eye-opener of what sorts to mankind?
Well, first and foremost, majority or most of humanity are bereft of any humanity, as the speaker in the clip mentioned. They bereft of humanity, and because they lack iman, they don't see us as human beings. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's one word in one verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is busy demonstrating that attribute of Him. وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ, that Allah alone can take from us martyrs. No one else can take martyrs from this ummah, but Allah permits who will be a martyr and who will will not be a martyr. So I think it's Allah's special favor on the people of Gaza, because no one else is allowed to enter there except the people of Gaza. They're fighting. So Allah is showering his favor and bounty upon them now by taking them as shuhada. We can try and hope and pray for it. If Allah didn't choose us, shahada is something that only Allah can choose for a person. So they are fortunate. Whatever they've lost of leg and limb and material aspects, when they see what is awaiting them in front in Jannah, they will forget about the hardships here in this world. And that is the message, that our message should be that, Ya Allah, take from us also shuhada and grant us the opportunity to be alongside our brothers and sisters in the liberation of Masjid al-Aqsa, Palestine, and also fighting all forms of oppression across the globe in restoring the izzah and honor of the Muslim Ummah.
Mufti Sahib, just a final question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts through people through tests depending on their ability to persevere. If you look at the reaction of the children of Gaza, and when they question about losing their family members, and they're saying that my faith and hope is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, notwithstanding I've got nothing. And we see in, visuals coming through of a little girl carrying her sister and walking down the street towards safety. So such is the level of iman that for them, they are content in their hearts that those that have been martyred are in a high state of Jannat, and whatever they are doing, they will follow suit. Mufti Sahib, perhaps, some quick nasiya on how we as South Africans should react to the situation, because it comes in a hadith, if I recall, that when you see a wrong being done, there's one of three things one can do. It's, advice from Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. That is, you physically stop that wrong, or you talk about it, or the least you can do is feel hurt in your heart and make du'as. Mufti Sahib?
So physically, there's nothing basically we can do. We cannot take up arms. We're the furthest away from them. I spoke about the 4 South African snipers that's killing our children in Palestine, in Gaza. South African-born snipers serving in the Israeli donkey force. But what we can do is the second thing is speaking about it. So that is weaponizing your voice, and that is what each and every believer can do. We have the ability. We have the voice. It's not only the duty of the ulama, but any and every person can speak out. We see non-Muslims also speaking in defense of the Palestinian people. I saw that clip, and it just reassured me that there's no way in the world people that have more resilience and strength than the Palestinian people, having gone through all of that and still praising Allah and still grateful, and smiling when their family members are being martyred. Where else in the world can you find such people? If they had to happen to us, we'd have been crying and become completely hysterical. But if we want to learn sabr and a resilience and fighting spirit, then right now you have to look at the people of Palestine. And that is my message, not only to South African Muslims, but to our brothers and sisters across the globe.
Indeed, mankind across the world, that, we have to react like the member of parliament from West Indies, without fear and favor. He spoke up. Mufti Sahib, I thank you for joining us and bringing some Islamic perspective to the situation. We make du'as that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mercy on the innocent women and children in Gaza and make them victorious in due course. Mufti Sahib, all the best, and do continue with the good effort and work in your Darul Iftar in the Western Cape. Remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair.
That was Brother Mufti Ibrahim Smith from Darul Iftar in the Western Cape, who gave us, some perspective from an Islamic point of view on the situation in Gaza, some very important points to consider from a humanitarian perspective. And as we hear about the situation in Palestine and the inhumane manner in which Netanyahu is behaving and the world is doing nothing about it, is cause for concern. We'll catch a short break, and inshallah after the break we'll continue with our program for tonight.
You've spent all that time, effort, and energy putting together an incredible business. Now, you need to tell people about your business. Advertising and marketing, it's what we do. Listen to this.
Absolutely amazing. It's been my first experience working with a radio station. So you don't actually know what to expect. And you also feel like, you're just going to be a number. But was just not a number. I think the support that we've got has been amazing. You guys have been absolutely amazing. You guys have opened doors for us that a couple of months ago I wouldn't have thought possible. I think the support for me has been the greatest. It's so widespread because you guys are on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, not just radio based. We've got people in Johannesburg listening to you guys. So it's so widespread.
The breakfast rush brings
Danger. Questions too hard. Remember that time when you said MI5?
Yeah.
And you were correct. And then you changed your answer to something that sounds like this.
You, Nishal, are in the wrong business. You should be a math.
But Musrad, I told you twice that you were correct. Don't change your answer while we were talking, and you still changed it.
Okay, perfect. Let's get to the second question.
And your final question for almost 2,000 Rand worth of goodies.
Sophie, Lisi, Ramsey, Sneezy, Happy, and Dashford.
Congratulations.
It's back on the Breakfast Rush.
In South Africa, countless numbers of sick patients leave their homes at the crack of dawn to join long queues at clinics and public hospitals, many of them suffering pangs of hunger in addition to the symptoms of disease. The Al Imdad Foundation's Slice for Life teams deliver sandwiches to these patients at more than 40 hospitals and clinics across the country. Help us to keep on relieving hunger. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Is your child getting the education they deserve? With technology advancing so rapidly, traditional schooling might just not be enough. So introduce them to IT Varsity's accredited online coding and robotics program. Take over on the social network every Wednesdays, and your child can participate in our Crack Your Code competition on Career Compass every Saturdays at 9 a.m. Invest in your child's future success. Visit itvarsity.org today and give them the tools they need to thrive in a digital world.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban, South Africa. The views and opinions expressed by the guests and presenters of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
أدعوك يا ربي أن تشرح لي صدري تهديني لتقواك في سر وفي جهري أدعوك يا ربي أن تشرح لي صدري تهديني لتقواك في سر وفي جهري وفقني لمرضاتك يسر وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. And we have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the world. فلك के नज़ारों ज़मीं की बहारों सभी दे मनाओ हुजूर आ गए उठो बेसहारो चलो गम के मारो खबर ये सुनाओ हुजूर आ गए 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 सुल्तान सुल्तान आया अरे बादशाह हो अरे कजबुला हो निगाहें झुकाओ हुजूर आ गए 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 हुआ चार सूर है मतों का बसेरा उजाला उजाला सवेरा 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 कलीमा को पहुंची खबर आमिना की मेरे घर में आओ हुजूर आ गए हैं हुजूर आ गए हुजूर आ गए हुजूर आ गए हुजूर आ गए हुजूर आ गए.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were chatting briefly about the situation in Gaza and Palestine, and we played a clip of the speech of a minister from Trinidad and Tobago who exposes U.S. double standards, and obviously the reaction and comments from Mufti Ibrahim Smith from Western Cape. The crime stats in South Africa is quite worrying. Durban Central ranked as the sixth most dangerous area in South Africa, and the police minister released crime stats and indicated that South Africa is a top 10 in terms of recorded serious crimes. Now, there are a lot of petty crimes that are taking place in and around the eThekwini region, and there's a lot of vagrants and crimes that take place, and these are attributable to homelessness, drug dealing, and cars broken into, copper pipe theft, etc. There's also a smash and grab, cell phone bags, etc., that are being stolen from the smash and grab. Then there's payday robbery. Now, common is the robo smash and grab hotspots, and we know there's been clips coming through in the Mayville area and other areas where cars are being, broken into. Cybercrime and smishing delivery service scams, to get your card details. So there's a whole lot of different criminal activities that are taking place, which we have to be aware of. And very often we pick up video clips from the various groups on the kind of criminal activities that are taking place. And people are sort of getting concerned, when they stop in every robo, you find, a vagrant standing there and tapping the window and wanting some kind of help. And when somebody opens the window, more often than not, they will grab the cell phone from the individual's hand, or there's a bag at the back of the car and they'll open the door and grab the bag, etc. And the police is doing nothing much about it. So with me, I have, brother or Councillor Imtiaz Sayed. He's the founder of eThekwini Sacoor. He's the president of the Active Citizens Coalition. He's a councillor in eThekwini municipality. He's a member of the eThekwini District CBF board. Imtiaz is, a civic activist of note. We know during the unrest, being involved with eThekwini Sacoor, he was very, very active on the road to deal with the security challenges that we faced during the unrest period. And after a long time, Imtiaz is joining me in the studio. Imtiaz, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Alaikum salam, Yunus. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, Imtiaz is now becoming a veteran. I see previously he was nice, fit, prim and proper.
Yeah, we're getting
he's putting on a little bit of weight because maybe he feels he cannot stop eating, or possibly there are other challenges he has. But Imtiaz, you're wearing two caps today. First is a security cap. And before I came into the studio, a lot of my avid listeners indicated to me that, crime is on the increase. And, people are being caught by surprise. And innocent guys are becoming victims of this smash and grab and various other petty criminal activities. And the more recent one is, I've seen some, video messages coming through that people, in the Overport area around where, Checkmart, etc. is, are walking around and, criminals are stopping their vehicles and quickly grabbing the cell phone of individuals walking and grabbing their wallets and getting into the cars and running off. And this seems to be the order of the day, a new type of petty criminal activity that's taking place. So from a security perspective, perhaps you just want to highlight what seems to be common now in and around this, Ward 31, but I'm sure it's prevalent in other wards throughout the country and indeed in in other areas. We've got listeners in Pietermaritzburg, Tonga, Stanga, and perhaps they are also facing it. And you mentioned to me, off air, that people are facing all kinds of criminal activities. For example, if they're driving and somebody will throw something on the windscreen. And I read just before I came in, one family from Chatswood, as they were driving down, and they went over a packet that had some sharp objects that damaged the tire, and the tire blew, and they drove and drove until they came to the nearest garage, and they realized there were a whole lot of criminals down the road waiting to attack them. So perhaps you could just give us a perspective on what type of criminal activities are prevalent and how do we react to these activities?
I think firstly, just to speak to it, what we need to remember is that crime fighting and SAPS is part of service delivery.
Correct.
It's actually a form of a side of government that we all neglect to even recognize as to what they're supposed to be doing. And therefore, in that, we have the CPF platforms to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do. But remember, policing in its true form and in the nature that we have it, every area and every single space can't be policed. And therefore, the impetus and the importance coming right on top from the presidency to speak to why it's important for you to join your neighborhood watch, your CPF and all of that. Because criminals by their very nature come from communities. You know who criminals are, where they live, all of that, if they're in your community. What are you doing about it? And what are you doing constructively about it by getting it resolved? Now, let's speak about just Ward 31. And we can go into murder and we can do all of those funny things. But let's just speak to exactly what we're speaking about. And I've had calls from Harding and Kokstad and all of that. And all of these areas and communities are facing the same challenge. The challenge is vagrancy, right? Now, in the Overport area, you'll ask yourself a question. And when Chris Papas used to be in Ward 31 as the councillor, I used to ask him regarding service delivery. What is the difference between Musgrave Road and Brickfield Road? Why is there two distinct differences between how these areas looked, right? And when we discussed it and we understood, the first part is the people that live there have a different sense of responsibility around their own area. When you go to Musgrave, the people have ownership. When you come to Brickfield Road, people have a don't care attitude. Who is it? The people that live there. Now, it's the exact same thing. When we're talking about vagrancy, if you go to Musgrave and Essenwood and all of that, there's not so many vagrants because nobody's opening their windows and nobody's opening their house doors to give things. But when you come to Brickfield Road, as soon as there's someone at the corner, every single female, male, anybody, you opening your window, you're giving 10 rand, you're giving 5 rand. And then tomorrow you complain that your meter got stolen, your copper pipe got stolen, your washing got stolen from the line. This is our situation. We're creating supply and demand. I mean, everything works around that. So if people are in the area and they want something and we give it to them, they're going to use it for what they need. Now, I'm not saying, and I'm not painting all homeless people with the same brush because there's different categories of homeless. You could be on the street for many different reasons. But majoritarily, most homeless people that we have interacted with are on drugs. Now, when you create that space where they're staring at the robot, you're giving 10 rand, what are they then using it for? And then you want to ask yourself, why is there so much of drugs being sold? So it's an endless cycle. But we are the major influences and codependents of these people by giving them things. So if we start stopping that, and just another thing, you'll see that PRASA has started closing off all their railway lines. In the bottom area near Ambilo, most of the vagrants used to be in that area around Albert Park. They've now removed them, right? Where are they going to go to? There's some of them sitting in Albert Park, but they're now moving into the suburbs. So you're going to see hundreds of different faces. And the question we raise now is that you'll have outside the shops the homeless people, vagrants, with a little bit of a vest on, acting as a car guard. What in fact are you guarding? But yet we feel obliged to open our window and give that 5 rand and 2 rand and 10 rand because we are giving in nature. I understand that.
Correct.
But let's start giving properly. Let's start giving to organizations that feed. Let's start giving where we know it's not going to them directly, where they can start doing untoward things with it, And we need to stop giving in our area if you want to get rid of vagrancy. That's the bottom line.
Now, Imtiaz, in a lot of these shopping malls and supermarkets, in the parking area, these guys put in that so-called uniform and stand around and guide you when you're reversing your car and expecting a couple of rands. Is it the onus on the owner of those supermarkets to remove these guys or get them out? Because end of the day, those are the guys that eventually turn against you, and yet they self-made car guards.
I speak to the responsibility and the ownership of areas. Business people within the overport area, especially around the supermarkets, are only interested in their own interest. If you're coming to the shop, they're not interested in what's happening to you on the outside. The only time it starts affecting you is when the numbers or the figures on the till start dropping. That's the only time they'll start speaking about what can we do, how can we change things. And when it doesn't hurt the pocket, they're not interested, Now, when we open our doors and we give to these homeless people, if there's no market there, they're not going to be there. Let's be honest about it, So that's a quick solution for us to resolve that. But the other question is, at the Sparks Road, Brickfield Road intersection, we willy-nilly will have our windows open, we're driving freely, we're driving comfortably. How many of us would do the same thing at the Jan Smuts intersection, at Bel Air Road? We wouldn't do it because it's unsafe. You wouldn't do it at the bottom of the Reservoirs intersection because it's unsafe. We feel safe in our area even though there are so many people around us. And when we do interviews, we do regular Metro Police cleanups with Metro Police, unbeknown to many people. All Metro Police is really doing is displacing them. They're moving them out of your area for today. Tomorrow they're going to be back in your area because there is no real plan the city has to resolve this urbanization issue that we have. They have no homes. They have nowhere to go. And when you interview them, where are you from? Some are from Flagstaff, Umzinkulu, Eastern Cape. You hear some town names that you've never heard of in your life. But everyone is here. How many of them are criminals? How do we check that? You pull up their sleeves, you'll see they've got tattoos, jail tattoos. What were you in for? Rape, murder, this. Now, all of these people are actually standing next to you where your vehicle is. Do they know what time you're going to work? Do they know where you live? Are they seeing you coming out of your driveway? What is going on? We had an incident just on Arcadia Road. The lady was home alone during the day. There were 2 people in the park. They jumped up the tree. They went into the house. Luckily, she saw them and she created an alert. But this guy actually pulled a knife for her, Now, these are the types of things that are happening in our area, and we're seeing it over the past 6 months exponentially growing in our area. We need to stop giving, and then only we can start doing a cleanup.
So your advice to our listeners out there that when they're driving, keep your windows closed, ignore these vagrants. They don't deserve any money. If you want to give sadaqah, give it to deserving people in deserving areas rather than these vagrants. You could turn around risking yourself. Either they grab your cell phone or otherwise. Avoid going into smash and grab areas like in Mayville and other areas, because whilst the police presence is there, they're not there all the time. And this activity continues because these are vagrants that are taking the money and the cell phone, selling it to buy drugs. For example, you got an expensive Samsung cell phone, they care a damn about the value. And there are people that actually buy this, the people that deal in cell phones. So what is your general advice to our people out there, besides reading the dua, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allahu, la hawla wa la quwwata, that is the Masnoon dua, and making sure that you are well aware of your surroundings, in terms of these vagrants, in terms of being alert, in terms of not going into areas that have problems of this nature. What is your advice to our listeners?
When it comes down to the issue of me saying don't give to a vagrant, I'm not saying don't give to anybody at all. Find organizations that feed, do feeding, do all of those things. That's good work, right? But look at it from a holistic perspective of your entire community. It's not about your 2 rand. It's about the 300 2 rands that one vagrant gets in a day, right? That creates the space for him to be on that street. But when he doesn't get that, what is he going to be doing? He's going to be attacking your home. He's going to be doing this. Your children can't walk to school these days. It's not safe for them to walk on Brickfield Road, realistically. What are we doing in our areas? We need to start taking back your area. If people don't live in your area, they shouldn't be there, and that's the bottom line. I mean, going down to Ballet Road, I mean, Pinetown it's a smash and grab hotspot. You can't stop at any robot. If you're in town, Queen Street, Albert Street, around all those areas, Beeder Street, you can't drive around with your window open and talking on your cell phone. It's going to get snatched from you. That's the reality of the climate that we have. And there's not enough policing. No matter how much we speak about it, no matter how many feet you put on the ground, it's not going to fix the problem, because criminals will just move where the police are not sitting. And that's the reality of what it is.
Now, if just, walking around, in the streets, I know some people don't have vehicles and they're going to walk to go to the supermarkets, etc. What's your advice to those people? Because recently there's been an increase of people driving past criminals, noticing somebody is walking in the road with his cell phone, stopping, snatching the cell phone, handling the individual's pocket, taking his wallet, and because the person is old or he's not quick enough, he can't do anything, and nobody helps because people are scared. If they get involved, they may get knifed or get shot or whatever.
Absolutely.
What's your advice? That people should, at sort of very minimal reasons, walk around unnecessarily in the streets?
With the advent of online shopping and all of these things these days, and I can understand some people might not be into that or might not be savvy enough to deal with those things, and you have to go out. Agreed. But we got to look at things from a very different perspective, right? One of the biggest problems that we've always faced and always had as a country is number plates, vehicle number plates. You can go to any number plate shop and make a number plate for a different vehicle and put it onto your car, right? Now that they've changed, and this is something we've been lobbying for and speaking about for quite some time, to say that the number plate system should be regulated and properly regulated at that. Vehicles should have number plates that are fixed to the vehicle, either by pop rivet or bolted at, but not being able to be easily replaced. Now with the new number plate system coming in, before you could see there's a vehicle coming from NKR, it's Ladysmith, Dundee, all of these different areas. With the new ZN number plate, you don't know where a vehicle is from. With the Ubers and all of that, you can't identify that this vehicle is not even from this town, right? Now, realistically speaking, how difficult is it going to become for us to start recognizing those criminals that are using those number plates? And when those are changed to ZN, is now going to be even more of a problem. Government needed to have regulated it where when you go buy your license or you register your vehicle, you get a set of number plates. And that's it. If you need another one, you need to go and apply again. It's not regulated. And that's where one of our major issues are. Now, when these guys are coming around, they're using Ubers, it's a clone plate. There's so many of these incidences, right? You'll be walking on the street, two guys jump off the vehicle, they come, snatch your phone, jump back into the car, and they're gone. What do you do? Why are you walking on the phone with the phone on the road? But the question is this, Yunus: how have we normalized in society to say that it's not okay for you to walk on the streets with the phone or anything valuable? What kind of country are we living in where you can't walk on the street with money in your pocket? What are we doing, realistically speaking, right? There is a program called E2. It's an eyes and ears program developed by SAPS to work in partnership with all security companies. If security companies don't know about it, they can contact me. We'll get them in touch with the people that are doing this. There's groups, just say you're working in the Sydenham area, Ward 31. There's groups where the crime prevention officers of SAPS, Metro Police, and all of them are sitting together with the security companies. So because the security industry is a force multiplier. There are more security guards than police officers. Now, if SAPS wanted to work in their silo, how would that now work? So they've partnered and they said, you having a problem, you see something, you need us, call us, we're there. And those are the kinds of things that are in place. I can't speak to it directly as to what a person should do. Criminals are opportunistic. They're going to see something, they're going to take it. We need to be vigilant, unfortunately, in this country.
Thank you, Imtiaz, for giving us a perspective of the crime situation and some important information to share. Later in the program, we'll probably look at the importance of neighborhood watches, the linkage with security companies within the neighborhood, and how to deal with potential security problems. On that note, we'll take a short break for the news, and inshallah, we'll continue after the news break.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Flood-induced damage, American Monina. Persistent floods continue to leave a trail of destruction in KwaZulu-Natal. Authorities have assessed the damage caused by recent floods in some parts of eThekwini. While there are no fatalities, homes were destroyed and further damage was inflicted on the ailing infrastructure. Some residents of eThekwini have this to say.
I am upset. It's terrible. It's not good for us. It's our health condition is not good at all. At our age, it's not good at all. Look at our children. They're going to live in an environment like this. We can't afford to go and buy a house somewhere else with the cost of living that's so high today. So we need the municipality, we need the government to come and assist us. That's what we need. We're not crying for anything else. We need assistance. We need pavements. If you look around, there's no pavement down here. So where does our children walk?
And there was no assistance from the government or anyone. We just trying to survive. And now the slight rain came. It was a worry on our side. So all of us got together, cleaned the drains ourselves. But in front of my yard is big potholes. So even if you clean your vehicle, you can't even come out your depot because the road is damaged so badly.
More news, a new study has given insight into how some people manage their finances. Standard Bank carried out a study which involved analyzing the data of more than 402,000 job holders. Now, according to Standard Bank, almost half of the income earners whose data was examined have less than 1,000 rands or negative balances in their accounts by payday. It says the individuals received their salaries on popular payday or payment dates. The bank revealed that a day before payday, 28% were in red, some already dipping into their overdrafts. Standard Bank's Kamelo Makeke has this to say.
As a nation, we are really bad at savings, but we also we're quite a consumption-based nation. So we do use a lot of credit, but also we do use a lot of expensive credit, meaning where you actually have high interest debt that you need to repay. That's what really gets us into trouble. We use debt to repay debt, and that's normally you get charged a bit more when you add debt on debt. So that's really what gets us into the debt trap where we end up paying much higher interest rates on that debt. So that for me is the biggest one. If anything, we should actually start to instill a culture of saving, even if it's in small portions, just getting the discipline right or the habit. That's all that matters at this point.
Staying with that story, Market is encouraging earners to track their expenses and draw up budgets.
In our app, where we can actually show you what your payments for the next 15 to 30 days are going to look like so that you can actually plan ahead. We also have a budgeting tool that shows you how much you've spent over the period and how much you still left to pay for the month. So I think just sticking to those and getting used to it and categorizing your expenses clearly and cutting out the ones that you don't need. That's just something that you can do on a daily basis. Just logging into your app quickly and checking how far you're doing on each day. It just builds that habit of being clear in how you manage your expenses. And really for me is going back to basics and being clear on where you spend your money and how you spend it.
Finally, international story. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, says that Israel has killed one of its staff members in Deir al-Balah in the central Gaza Strip. Spokesperson Juliet Tuma says she can confirm that UNRWA car was hit, saying one of the colleagues was killed. A report says that the man's brother was also killed. Israel has killed more than 220 UNRWA staff members in Gaza since October 2023. The regime has also damaged or destroyed 2/3 of the agency's facilities in Gaza. That's according to the spokesperson. Further report says many displaced Palestinians have sought shelter in UNRWA facilities, including schools. Report says Israel has also conducted strikes on the schools now 10 shelter. Your weather, it's 21 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. Persistent floods continue to leave a trail of destruction in KwaZulu-Natal. That's the news.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport.
Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا.
Car won't start?
Can feel auto.
Noisy brakes?
Can feel auto.
Due for a service?
Can feel auto. Can feel auto. The answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Spend 400 rands or more to win with Checkers Foods Kawi Park and Radio Alansar. You could be one of 8 weekly winners of a Philips 6.2-liter air fryer or a Weber Bryce stand valued at over 2,000 rand. Hop into Checkers Foods Kawi Park, shop, drop your till slip into the entry box, and wait for your name to be announced on air. That's it. Checkers Foods Kawi Park, certified by the NIHT, the National Independent Halal Trust, across the butchery, bakery, and deli. T's and C's apply.
Upon Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who lives in the hearts of billions. In the hearts of billions.
नहीं है मगर हमने आंखों से देखा नहीं है मगर उनकी तस्वीर सीने में मौजूद है जिसने ला कर दिया है कलामे खुदा जिसने ला कर दिया है कलामे खुदा वो मोहम्मद मदीने में मौजूद है फूल खिलते हैं पढ़ पढ़ के सल्ले अला फूल खिलते हैं पढ़ पढ़ के सल्ले अला झूम कर कह रही है ये बातें सबा ऐसी खुशबू चमन के गुलों में कहाँ ऐसी खुशबू चमन के गुलों में कहाँ जो नबी के पसीने में मौजूद है हमने माना कि जन्नत बहुत है हंसी हमने माना कि जन्नत बहुत है हंसी छोड़ कर हम मदीना ना जाए कहीं यूं तो जन्नत में सब है मदीना नहीं और जन्नत मदीने में मौजूद है छोड़ना तेरा तैबा गवारा नहीं छोड़ना तेरा तैबा गवारा नहीं सारी दुनिया में ऐसा नजारा नहीं ऐसा मंजर ज़माने ने देखा नहीं ऐसा मंजर ज़माने ने देखा नहीं जैसा मंजर मदीने में मौजूद है ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह जबकि सरकार तशरीफ लाने लगे पूरो गिलमा भी खुशियां मनाने लगे हर तरफ नूर की रोशनी छा गई मुस्तफा क्या मिले जिंदगी मिल गई हलीमा तेरी गोद में आ गए दोनों आलम के रसूल अल्लाह ही अल्लाह दोनों आलम के रसूल अल्लाह ही अल्लाह जश्न आमद रसूल अल्लाह ही अल्लाह बीबी आमना के फूल अल्लाह ही अल्लाह ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we chatted briefly with Councillor Imtiaz Sayed, the founder of eThekwini Sacoor, and he highlighted some, crime information and how to deal with it. And later on in the program, we'll touch briefly on some of the other areas in crime. But our subject for this evening is also dealing with continuing with service delivery issues in the different wards and the state of service delivery in the eThekwini municipality, Msunduzi in Pietermaritzburg, and Kwaduguza in Stanga, and indeed other municipalities. And last week we chatted that a lot of municipalities are receiving qualified audit reports, and our economist and asset manager Hassan highlighted from the Auditor General's report that more than 75% of municipalities in KZN and indeed in the country have got qualified audit reports. So that reflects on the state of service delivery. I want to bring in Councillor Ernest Smith, the councillor from Ward 27. Ernest has been with us in the last couple of shows, and the listeners have requested that Ernest joins us because of the candid way in which he presents his response, and he's not afraid of calling a spade and not defending the municipality. Ernest, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me again. I do appreciate coming on, Yunus, really.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Ernest. Ernest, I was mentioning when I commenced the show that we had a lot of rain in the last few days. As you and I are driving in the different roads, and we noticing that the potholes are increasing in size, and with the water, sometimes you're traveling at a decent speed and suddenly you bang this pothole and you curse the municipality. And then part of the roads on the side are being washed away because municipality workers have been digging and fixing up, water pipes, etc., and not repairing, and it's getting bad to us. For example, in West Road, where Imtiaz and myself and Hassan and others, we drive towards coming to the studio, and there's more potholes to avoid than the road itself, and this has been prevalent for a number of years. And we know the general state of service delivery, we've been harping on this subject for a number of months. It's getting bad to worse. And as Imtiaz pointed out, crime is also a municipal service delivery and a government service delivery issue, because Metro Police are part of the municipality and they should be looking at criminal activities. And he mentioned that the CBD is becoming a no-go area because, you're scared to even walk in the CBD because you're going to get mugged. And there's various other criminal activities. But motorists are complaining about service delivery. I've heard tourists coming in and they're getting mugged in the central area. So eThekwini is on section 154 and there's a call for 139. Now, perhaps I know that you in the trading services cluster, where you deal with electricity, water, and other trading services like solid waste, etc. And we know that, even solid waste have got its fair degree of problems. And because the employees are unionized, there's a huge degree of problems with them. And people are not even delivering waste, the black packets to households, because that is being stolen now as well. And when those trucks come, they leave the place in a bigger mess than when the bags were there. So perhaps, Ernest, you just want to reflect that, or agree or disagree with me, that progressively the situation is getting bad to us.
Of course. That goes without saying, Yunus. And, the unfortunate part is when you look at what service delivery is, all right, whether it's your black bags, whether it's the roads, whether it's the street lights, whether it's the trees getting trimmed or just general street sweeping, the unfortunate part is there are so many contributing factors to this. And I'm just going to take us back a little bit into our previous conversation. We are facing a situation as a city where we cannot tackle crime effectively. It's as simple as that. We do not have the numbers. We are, what are we now? 2010. We are 13 years past our World Cup standard. Under our World Cup standard. We were supposed to have a good number of, I think it was 10,000 Metro members, if I'm not mistaken, out and about. That has not happened. Right. The second part is, before I go there, a lot of residents tell me, especially those who are close to and around the stadiums and the main arterial routes there, suddenly when the World Cup happened, there were no vagrants on the streets. and I don't mean to use the word vagrants in a derogatory fashion, where unfortunately the municipality has gotten to the point where there's a sensitivity around what we call people on the street, whether it's homeless or vagrants, so much to the point that the name homeless and vagrant is now derogatory, and now they're referred to as the pavement community, which, if this term keeps on evolving and we have to try and keep up. But the reality is, the comparison is always drawn. How come in 2010 the municipality could achieve this good standard? There's no vagrants around. There's no people begging at the robots. Everybody's saying, "Wow, what a wonderful city." And not even a month after the World Cup is gone, suddenly we've gone back to having people begging at the robots. And I want to emphasize and agree with Imtiaz on one point. We cannot be funding a syndicate, because this begging at the robots, this soliciting of money from people, and you'll notice, especially on roads like Argyle Road, or what's it called now, Zandile Tusi, and other roads, there's the use of children, which is now obviously child exploitation and abuse, and that brings in a whole new dynamic, and it is a multi-million rand syndicate. And that is what I think the listeners also need to understand, is that when we reach in for the 2 rand or the 10 rand or whatever it is, we are busy fueling this, because the reality is these children in the road do not belong to the lady or whoever, or the man on the side of the road that they go and give the money to. They're actually renting these children from their parents, from whichever area that these people are coming from. And I've been told the people are coming from far as Inanda, as Imtiaz said, Richards Bay and other areas, because there's the perception that there is wealth in those areas. And the reality is, well, us giving 10, 20, 30, 50 rand, we are fueling a problem. And it translates into drugs, it translates into the amount of people on the roads. And this also, and I'm sorry to say, this also translates to the feeding schemes that we have. Right here on Ridge Road, all right? Peter Macabre Ridge, as it's known. Every Sunday at about 2:00, there's some gentleman or lady, whoever it is, in a panel van that comes and distributes food to, the disimpoverished peoples, homeless, vagrants, whatever you want to call them. They distribute that. Now, I've received at least 30, 40 complaints around it, but everybody, and I don't know if Imtiaz, you've had experienced the same thing, but everybody will rather come through you and say, you please make a noise, because if I complain, it looks like I'm not supporting my brother in doing what he's doing. I don't know if you've had the same kind of thing. And it becomes a problem, because you're bringing people into an area that not all of them are thieves and crooks, but there are people who are using that crowd as a cover to scope out what you have got. I, unfortunately, in Soldier's Way, whether I was stupid or not, but I had my window open, not even 2 mils, and I just put my phone down, coming back from a council meeting or something. As soon as I put my phone down, I saw a hand reaching in, and this guy was gone within 10 seconds and right into the taxi rank.
With your phone?
No. He was probably maybe 15 centimeters away from taking it, not like 15, that far. I literally just put it down. And I yelled and screamed at him because he was trying to steal something.
You should have closed your window.
No, it was fully up. Yunus, I'm telling you, it was not even 2 centimeters open.
Didn't you close it and smash his fingers or something?
I tried to, but some guys got long fingers and very quick. So.
Yes.
But the reality is, people are desperate. And please don't think in the description of this fellow, and I need residents and listeners to understand, this fellow was dressed in Gucci and polo tops. It is the most unsuspecting person that you could actually look at that is dressed so well, and suddenly, boom. Another incident was on Hartley Road, where my cell phone last year, I think it was, early last year, we were busy doing cleanups and the like. And these blokes came up, and you think, okay, these, as council, you don't know everybody. So somebody comes, hey, how are you? They stop the car, hey, how are you? Hey, up. My cell phone's gone. We chased them down, police went after them, but, people disappear in the split of an eye, and in a split second. So the reality of it is, and these guys, again, okay, those were foreigners. But the reality is, self-awareness is key. If we keep on inviting negative elements into our communities, whether it's feeding schemes, giving money, the like, we are creating our own problem. And the problem is that residents are not wanting to report it to Metro Police because it's seen to be unneighborly, unbrotherly, whichever you want. So there are those number of problems. The reality is, once you stop the supply, it starts dissipating. The same thing like a wound. If you keep on scratching it, it's going to keep on festering and bleeding and the like. Once you put ointment on and you stop touching it and put a plaster over it, it starts to heal. It may not be 100%, but the reality is that's what I wanted to add to that specific thing. Oh, the last thing, sorry, but on that point, there are organizations which residents can use. And please, I don't want people to think I'm being inhumane. There are various communities across the metro that have taken a no supporting vagrant stance. You can support SANZAC. You could support the Salvation Army. You can go and support the Gift of the Givers. So these organizations are there to assist people who are down and out. And then whether it's Lila or Zakat, at least you know what it's there for and it's been used. But to answer your question, Yunus, if the municipality does not step up and start actually hiring people and appointing people who actually have some competent knowledge about how to run a municipality, we are going straight into a wall of 139, and it's not going to be a pretty story.
Now, Ernest and Imtiaz, I want to bring you in here. About 10 years ago, I remember when I was in the municipality, and I'm not saying because many of us retired, that things have gone from bad to worse. And I suspect that is the case because the replacements haven't done their job.
Yeah.
The various departments had a program in place and an emergency program dealing with disasters, dealing with floods, dealing with problem areas over and above the routine maintenance. For example, if your routine maintenance is to fix up potholes in the different wards, you had teams going in and fixing.
Correct.
But if you have a flood, then you get the emergency teams in place and prioritize the budget to deal with the emergencies.
Absolutely.
For example, sorting out blocked drains, sorting out sewer spillages, sorting out burst water pipes, etc. Now we face a situation where there are a backlog of a whole lot of deliverables, and with the floods and with other problems, things are getting worse. And because of the inexperience of the personnel there, and they don't have the management skills to start reprioritizing maintenance work, let alone cyclical maintenance, let alone dealing with infrastructure issues like that's capital maintenance, etc.
Yes.
The city is in a sad state, both in eThekwini, Msunduzi, in Pietermaritzburg, because we recently drove to Msunduzi. We got an office there.
Mhm.
And if you go into the CBD in Msunduzi, it's even worse than eThekwini CBD. And Kwaduguza is even worse, and that applies to other municipalities. Yet in other municipalities in other parts of the country, for example, in the Western Cape and in other parts, you'll notice there's always competent personnel, and they forget about housing delivery, forget about water reticulation and other big things. The basic stuff is not being done. Now, I know you part of the portfolio committee for trading services, and before that you were in human settlements, and I don't want to touch on human settlements because we know it's a disaster.
Correct.
They're building about 1,000 units a year when we build 20,000. Hostels are in a bad state. It's costing over 500 million to maintain hostels alone, where you're getting no revenue, which constitutes 4% of the rates base. And then if you look at the call centers, people don't even know how to answer phones. When people phone with rates and billing queries, they push from pillar to post, and they say they keep you in waiting, and then they drop the call.
Yep.
So people are getting frustrated and they're getting nowhere. And suddenly you get the meter readers coming in there to disconnect people's electricity and water because you haven't paid your lights. And the man is querying why his electricity and water bill has trebled. And because the meters haven't been read, these guys that disconnect the meters are coming in and forcefully disconnecting and wanting the guy to repay. They're very efficient in that part, but in terms of service delivery, total inefficiency. Imtiaz, I want you to come in and give us an explanation.
Yunus, just to get into it quickly, right? When you're speaking to, for example, a massive chain store, they don't start making winter clothing at the beginning of June. They start in December the year before, and it's all ready to go on the shelves when it needs to be. What we found, and what I personally found in the city, is that we have no renewal plan. We've only got a repair plan. And at that, it's a knee-jerk one. So it's as though we're running a sale all the time, and let's see what makes the biggest noise, and let's fix that only. That is how this municipality is running, right? Now, when we're speaking to it, I mean, right now, last year we proposed through council and obviously questions in council, the change of the line from St. Thomas to Earl Road. They gave us timeframes. They told us what it entails, reprioritization of funds and all of that. How long would it take for planning? It's going to take 3 weeks. We had to ask those questions again this year to say, what is going on? Why hasn't this pipeline changed? Because how can you have 69 leaks on one pipeline, which is the Peter Mokaba line, in a year? It's ridiculous. The cost of those repairs is equivalent to almost changing the line. So these are the sorts of things that the municipality hasn't adapted to. Now, when you're speaking to municipality, there's no staff, or hardly any, I would say, except albeit a few, that articulate the sense of responsibility and urgency in their job. It's a job. It's become a job. And how has that impacted on service delivery? Everyone goes to work in this municipality just to get paid. There's no real passion in what they're doing and how they carry out their work in order to get something done. The other thing about it is, and this is something that I speak heavily on when I'm in council, is to speak to the accountability of communication. Nobody really knows, and you'll see, I think we put out the flyer of it, as to exactly which department deals with what. All you have is this one number, call this number and they'll fix everything. That's not the case. You need to know where you need to go to deal with rates. It's on the second floor. You need credit control. It's on the third floor in Florence Mkhize building. This is the number. This is the head of those departments. But nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to give out those numbers and say what it is. And also, when it comes down to the issue of councillors, and I'm being very frank about it, councillors don't want to give out the number. No, speak through me. You understand? We as councillors need to realize that the work of the municipality needs to be done by the municipality. There's a great misunderstanding of what we believe a councillor should be. A councillor is there to develop a ward. How many councillors today are speaking about ward development? Because of the municipality and the inadequacy within the municipality to deal with everyday service delivery, councillors can't focus on taking children to sports fields, creating jobs for them, and empowering women to do different things, looking at abuses within our society and all of those things. Service delivery is supposed to be deliverable automatically. Call this number, they'll fix your pothole. One of the problems with potholes, and coming back to that, is that the water and sanitation unit took it upon themselves to say that we will repair the pothole after we fix a pipe. Now, within the municipality, we've got eThekwini Transport Authority. We have our own tar. We have our own vehicles, our own stampers, our own rollers, right? So now between two HODs, there is an argument to say, why don't you give me the budget that you have to repair after you fix a pipe, and I'll fix the pipe for you? Because I'm here. I'm within your business, the municipality. No. I will give out my contracts. So this is what happens. Water department comes open up a hole. Doesn't talk to anyone else. Now they have to come and put in crusher. That gets left there. And now there has to be a tender to go out to fill that hole. Instead of just sending out a job card to the transport unit, engineering unit, to come and fix that the very next day. And these are the arguments that we make. The other issue was DSW. You'll see a DSW truck that will ride around, right? You've got 4 or 5 people around this truck, but they will be at your house at 6 o'clock in the morning. You haven't even taken out your dirt because that's when they start. But they want to be done by 10 because that's their run and they want to go home. We're saying, hold on, you get paid the entire day, for the entire day. People can take out their dirt at 8 o'clock. You can fetch it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We don't have an issue with that, right? Why is it that you want to do your work quickly and go home? Cut the staff in the back of the truck. Put them onto the street and let them start cleaning up. Now, these are the things that you need to advocate for, because municipality doesn't just want to change, because now you've got issues with your union and the union says this, and no, you're doing this. It would never used to be like that. A simple thing like timesheets. I mean, ghost workers within the municipality. Staff don't want to fill out, use biometrics. Why? Because the timesheet system works in their favor. So these are all the challenges that we face. We need to start speaking to it and advocating for it to be changed.
Now, some interesting comments you made regarding the role of a councillor, the role of officials. That's all being compromised. The previous mayor, when he came into my show last year sometime, mentioned that he's sick and tired of officials coming in the morning, signing, disappearing for the day, coming in the afternoon, signing off. The grades of the municipalities varies from grade 3 to grade 27. The city manager is on grade 27, earning 3 million a year. The deputy city managers are earning 2.5 million a year. The heads of departments are earning just under 2 million a year for doing bugger all. They come in there, they come in, have their coffee in the morning, sit in meetings. And when you measure their performance, they want a performance bonus in addition to the level to the 13 check. So the municipality salary bill is astronomical. And if you measure performance against its salary bill, which the ratepayer has to fork out, it's probably 20% value for money. Imtiaz?
Correct, absolutely.
Councillors, we got the same problem. Now, Imtiaz, you would have received a lot of criticism. So would you as Ernest. What are you doing as councillors? You're delivering bugger all. Imtiaz, you came, you mobilized in your civic ticket, ACC, and in the end of the day, now people ought to realize that we're looking at 2026 elections and we're going to have programs dealing with how to capacitate leaders to win ward elections so that there's more good councillors appointed rather than on a political basis and they go in there and sit and do nothing.
100%.
Of the 200 councillors, you need at least 30, 40 that are competent to really take council to task in addition to the party councillors that come on board. So there's going to have to be a new game plan come 2026 to get councillors who can provide an oversight, deal with service delivery and help people. For example, Imtiaz, we've had a lot of people from the various areas coming in and saying, listen, I'm a widow, I've got a 22 grand bill, they cut my lights, I'm getting no help from organizations because, money is not available. And I have to be sitting here without lights. And from a Muslim woman's perspective, she's got her 4 months and 10 days. What does she do? 22 to 30 grand bill. Now, we know that there's various policies in place to assist those that have disease estates, etc. And a lot of them are not aware of these things. But you get the billing department not considering all these factors and just coming and disconnecting lights. That is a very efficient department because those contractors are getting paid big bucks. Over and above the contract value of what they do, they're getting bribes to not disconnect lights. And even if they disconnect, they reconnect and the guy gets a bill of a reconnection fee. 100%. So this is rife. Everywhere, corruption and bribery is the order of the day. Service delivery is heavily compromised. So coming back to the point, Ernest, that we were chatting about of the inefficiency, the various levels of staff. I'm going to put a question to you. Is there any department in the municipality that you can put forward and say this is an efficient department that we can say we're proud of them? I'm throwing it to you and Imtiaz.
Well, you put me on the hot seat in that one. Listen, Yunus, they're all on a sliding scale. And how deplorable.
I thought, I could say, okay, Treasury, they say it's a well-run area, yet it's no more debt-free, yet it's no more having budget prioritization meetings. And the billing department that runs is in shambles. And the rates department is in shambles. It takes many months to get a rates clearance certificate.
If you get it
to answer a billing query, it takes many months. Pensioners whose house values are below 2 million, who are over 60 should be getting a rebate. They put in the application in March or February, and you find the July, August bill, there's no rebates being. When you phone them, they say something is wrong with your application. But why didn't you, in March, when you read the application, say correct this or do that? In September and October, they tell you there's something wrong with the application. Many of them don't even know, they can't find the application. So thousands of applications are being lost. So all age citizens are losing 500-600 rebates in the houses. And then they're getting charged incorrect meter reading for water because the water meter readers don't go to the houses. They just guess. For example, 2056 last month, 3056, he guesses 1,000 kiloliters for a month. They charge the sewer charges all go up proportionately. And the individual used to get a water bill of 500 rand. He's got a bill of 4,500. So he gets the shock of his life. And sometimes they don't read it for 3 months and they hit him with one big bill. Electricity meters are not read for 6 months. Suddenly they hit him with a 15,000 bill. Where is the individual who's a pensioner or is a general worker can manage that? So you can't point out any department that's efficient anymore. So is this what the ratepayer deserves from the municipalities?
Well, Yunus, that I'm going to put the blame where it squarely is. All right, This problem started because we put the wrong people who essentially put their friends and political frenemies in there. And I say frenemies because it's a term between friend and enemy, depending on which way the wind is blowing. And
now, coming to that point, both Imtiaz and you are sitting here, and the community are blaming both of you. They can listen, Imtiaz, you stood for elections.
Yeah.
Now your hands are tied because you are a minority councillor in the bigger scheme of things, because you stood for your civic organization and you became a councillor. You raise issues, and EXCO is run by a particular political party, and they prioritize certain areas, Kwamashu, Amlazi. That's where our main voters stay. Forget about the Asheville's of this world and other areas. So can the councillors who stood for elections that go there and make their voice known and nothing happens, that can they be blamed?
Let me come in there, Yunus. When you're talking
because I'm
about,
getting some WhatsApp messages to that effect, Imtiaz.
When you're talking about being a councillor and when you're talking about getting services delivered, remember there's two parts to council. One is a ward councillor and one is a PR councillor. It doesn't necessarily mean that you sitting in council, you do nothing. You're part of committees. Now, remember, the one other thing is that we're part of a speakers committee. There are 24 parties within this council, and you sit in the speakers committee where you can actually speak to what it is that you really require. Now, when you sit in council, you might have 2 seats, but the DA might have a bigger number, the ANC might have a bigger number. When you join with other smaller parties and you come together, you form yourself into a block. And that gives you a certain level of influence over the city. When you're speaking to HODs and when you're speaking to different people within the municipality, that you need to get things done in terms of what you need to do, you need to have that influence. And that's where it is. It's politics combined with how powerful you stand within council. You can sit in council. There are many councillors that sit there with 1 seat and have no idea of what to do or how to do anything. That's a given. It's there, right? But to speak to saying that councillors themselves, and also remember, when you vote for a bigger party, they got to toe their party line. They have their own caucus leaders and they've got to caucus amongst themselves. I mean, Ernest was with me the other day in trading services, right? And it was, remember, this is a new committee that sat for the first time. So now we've got a new chairperson, which is from the IFP, Mdun Kosi. They made a mistake or didn't make a mistake, but on the agenda, they had election of a deputy chair and election of a whip. But on the register, they already put the names down. So meaning that they've already discussed this amongst themselves, which we don't have a problem with because that's politics. That's the nature of it, right? But when you really look at the numbers, Ernest, in that committee, there's UIM with 1 seat, there's Action SA, and there's myself. That makes up 3 seats. The DA, IFP, and EFF together make up 15 seats, and the ANC makes up 15 seats. Tell me where's the balance of power in decision makings within that committee? It lies with the 3 of us. So if the 3, the EFF, the DA, and the IFP want X, and the ANC wants Y, we're the only ones that sit there that say, this is the way we go. It's about us speaking to each other. It's not about just being in an opposition and fighting. I mean, Ernest and I can sit here today and agree on many issues, but there are certain fundamental issues that we can disagree on. If I speak to Ernest and I say, Ernest, let us lobby for changing this pipeline here in Brickfield Road, and if he disagrees with me, then we have a problem. He's going to agree with me. There are many things that we can agree on. It's about how you understand what needs to happen and what needs to get done. And to answer your question, the department that I feel that's working the best in the city is the Parks Department because it doesn't exist.
Hassan, I want to bring you in. Yeah, we're talking budgets, we're talking ratepayers, money going into the kitty. We're talking about a 60 billion budget in Tekwani and different budgets in other municipalities. Ratepayers are complaining, even residents who are tenants, but they're contributing towards rates through their rent, are saying we're not getting value for money for the rates we pay. For example, in the area where you live, in an apartment, although you pay the levy which includes your rates, if your apartment is worth, say, 3 bars, you pay an average of about 2 grand a month rates. Now, you look at the services that you're receiving is far from what you're paying. Primarily because when you take your car out of your driveway, you're hitting a whole lot of potholes, you're going through stormwater blockages, the verges are not kept well. you get an incorrect bill, you can't get anywhere with that bill. So what are you paying your rates for? No services. So from a financial perspective, I mean, the city now has prioritized its budgets in other issues. 30% is corruption and maladministration. What is the way forward from a financial perspective? Auditor General has said there's qualified audit reports. Do we really look at changing the personnel, changing the way the Treasury Department operates? What is the solution? Because ratepayers are complaining.
There's a couple of key issues. Firstly, I mean, we've spoken about it a couple of times over the last few months. Municipalities in general, based on the audit reports that have come out, over 70% of them are qualified reports. So that's a big issue. To put it into perspective, just the other day, the Auditor General came out with a finding on national departments and state-owned enterprises. Over the past 5 years, irregular, fruitful and wasteful expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, 124 billion rands over the past 5 years. Countrywide. Mm-hmm. So this is national departments and state-owned. And if you include PRASA is regarded as a level 2 institution, so it's not a public, non-scheduled 2 public entity. If you include that, it goes to 135 billion rands. That's a massive amount of money over 5 years that's gone to irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. Now, imagine when you're adding the municipalities. They've had massive amounts. eThekwini has been a disaster over the last couple of years. Absolute disaster. From being a really top-notch municipality 15, 20 years back, it's deteriorated in a really bad way over the last 10 years, 10, 15 years in particular. And it's across the board in terms of many municipalities throughout the country. Personnel is one big issue. You need to get the right skills. And I saw recently there was an article that they're trying to get some of the retired engineers back into service and you need to get the right skills. Every second day, whether you're driving in Crescent Street or Hartley Road, Randall's Road, St. Thomas Road by the mosque or around there's how many water leakages that takes place. It's ridiculous. And what's that resulting in? Over 50% leakage. That means there's lost revenue that's just gone by. 50%. That's unacceptable. So you need to firstly, the expenditure needs to be reined in and put into the right places instead of spending so much on wage bills. And again, this is going to be another issue we're facing over the next few months, is that the unions are talking about a 12% countrywide public sector looking for a 12% wage increase, whereas the wage bill in the government budget is one of the biggest expenditures around. Obviously, interest is another big factor, but the wage bill is a big amount. You're not getting value for money in terms of what you're spending on the wage bill. And that's the big issue, not only in public sector, in terms of nationally, in terms of state-owned, but across the municipalities as well. And you need to rein in expenditure. One thing nationally, the government has done relatively okay. And you got to hand it to the late Tito Mboweni when he was appointed again in 2018 when things were going really south. And then also the recent finance minister, Inigonwana. They've actually helped the public sector wage bill. They've managed to keep it sort of below inflation or around inflation over the last few years. To put it into perspective, in the last, if you go back to 2020, the wage bill, 2000, the wage bill as a percentage of GDP was around 10%. It peaked in 2020 at 14% of GDP. It's now come back again to around 12.5%, 13%. So you can see they're slowly managing that. But if unions come in and want to push another 12%, you can't have it. It's ridiculous. You need to have service delivery improvement, and government is proposing, I think, around 3 to 4%. So you're going to get, if they get 4 to 4.5%, I think it'll at least the budget will be reasonably well maintained, and it will help in terms of bringing down our debt costs. Debt for us is the biggest issue. Is the biggest issue this country faces in terms of our wage bill is one big issue, and our debt service cost is another big issue. We've got 400 billion of debt servicing costs. That's 20 cents per rand that just goes towards paying towards interest. It's ridiculous. The amount that can be used towards healthcare, policing, and the like. It can happen. Coming back to your point with whether this thing can turn it on, I think it can turn it on. You're slowly seeing in the last couple of months, you talked about maybe which are good departments. I can say, and I think while crime is horrendous nationally, and I mean, you just see the murders that's taking place in the Eastern Cape and these places, these mass murders alike. But KZN, which is a real hotspot in terms of crime, there actually been some improvement in terms of policing activity over the last 3-4 months. Go and see the activity between the police and some of the private security companies over the last 4 months and see the impact they've had in terms of there's been a number of kidnappers, cash in transit heists, those guys that have either been taken out or have been arrested. Now, some politicians will throw a spanner and talk about maybe it was not the right. I'd rather be safe in my house and knowing that the police are doing the best they can do to take out those that are harming everybody else. And if it means having to use certain force to protect the others, then they should do it. Obviously, try and do it within the parameters of the law and making sure that there's no, we don't want to have vigilantes and that to happen. But at the end of the day, crime has gone out of control. And sometimes you have to take hard decisions and hard actions to try and rein in and bring it back to this thing. So I think there is certain areas that are improving. Other areas where I think slowly we are seeing improvement nationally, not municipalities. Municipalities still it's going to be a while to get that. But nationally, you're slowly seeing some of the SOEs. When last we had load shedding? Been a long time, over 200 days. Yes. Which shows that both if the public and the private sectors work together, there can be an improvement in certain areas. Transnet, why is still a disaster? But from November last year, when we had in Durban Port, massive backlogs, huge backlogs. I mean, a lot of the retailers were waiting for stock for December, and they were under pressure because they still sitting in containers in the port because they were not getting through. Slowly, there's been about a 20% apparently increase or improvement in terms of efficiencies in the ports and the like. So I think you're slowly seeing that. The one last area I want to highlight. Municipalities and the councillors you have talked about that they have a role to play in how they do it as well. But we as ratepayers and the like also have roles to play. See what the likes of Overport Ratepayers Association, the likes of Musgrave Ratepayers Association like. These associations in the last, especially in the last 2 years or so, you have seen they are making a positive impact. I live in Musgrave, Yunus in UT in the Asheville area. They're like, yes, there is still issues. I mean, we're talking about the breakdown, but they are trying to have an impact in terms of holding the councillors, trying to hold municipalities accountable. And you have to hold the appointed officials accountable. That's and you got to keep on driving them, keep pushing them, reporting it and getting it. I think a collective between all the various municipalities have to really jack up a hell of a lot to get to a reasonable efficiency. They're way behind what you would deem as being an acceptable level of service. And to get to that, those that are employed by the municipality, there are key performance measurements that they must be put across, and they must be held accountable towards it. If you don't perform, you don't get paid, or you don't get paid a certain bonus or whatever it is, and you must move on. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. It's easier said than done, but in the private sector, it's done. Make no mistake, private sector, come in there, you have your KPIs, you didn't perform, okay, sorry, you're either not going to get, there's no bonus, and then secondly, potentially a reduction in your salary or a demotion. Has to happen in the public sector. And that's one of the real ways that can drive change. I think lastly, and it's an important point, is I had a couple of last points as well. Municipalities are highly indebted. It's a big issue. While ratepayers are paying, there is still a culture in many municipalities throughout the country where people are not paying their electricity, not paying their rates. Who's the biggest, one of the biggest debt owing defaulters to ESCOM? Municipalities. Municipalities.
Because they're not getting paid and they're not paid.
Because they're not getting paid and they're not paid. But municipalities also in many extents, if you look at ratepayers,
squandering the money.
Look at eThekwini. eThekwini, they're receiving over 95% of their rates. So they can't complain that they are getting paid. Majority of the people are still paying their rates. They must pay it on to whoever they're owing the money to, whether it's ESCOM, whether it's on the water side and the like, and they must spend it. The issue is spending needs to be in the right areas. Infrastructure particularly needs to be focused on. We've got an aging infrastructure across many areas in the country that needs to be addressed urgently.
Yunus, I know that you're keen to chat, but I'm going to wrap up now and throw all three of you all with a curveball, which I always do towards the latter part of my program. And I've never thrown this curveball to anybody in a hurry, and it flashed my mind. I'm going to throw it to you guys. I know many of you were born in around the 1980s, and I started work in the municipality during that period. I'm not sure whether Imtiaz was born closely to 1980 or below. You, Ernest, and you, Hassan. But I commenced
You're giving our age away, yeah.
when I finished my articles for chartered accountancy, I joined the municipality in 1981, and we had 40 councillors, and that was the pre-apartheid era. And I know with inflation, increase in costs, etc., the budgets were relatively small. Durban was one of the few debt-free cities in the country, well-run. When Imtiaz was a toddler, his dad used to drive on the road. He couldn't find a pothole. There was efficient water supplies. There was no such a thing as load shedding. There was no such thing as crime. Okay, 20% of the population was taken care and 80% were in the townships. But those in the townships also, they were poor and they were living and they were discriminated against, for which we fought for democracy. But having said that, the number of councillors have 4 times as much since then. Service delivery has depreciated or decreased considerably. And crime has increased. Maladministration has increased. More than 50% of the budgets are being squandered. And progressively, because post-democracy, when the politicians came in, okay, they increased the numbers, but gradually after the 5-year term, 20, 30 councillors more, and it increased. So their objective was to create job opportunities, employment opportunities for the cadres, to increase their voter base, etc., etc. And there was no concern about service delivery, affordability, etc. We're talking today about inefficiency on the part of the management of staff of the municipality, including the councillors, which you alluded to, Imtiaz and Ernest, because only very few councillors are really doing the work, and those that came from the minority areas are being blamed because you're not making a difference. And Imtiaz mentioned that we got to form a block and see how we can influence service delivery. But the common approach today is, and we need to wrap up on this note, and I'm going to give you a chance, Ernest, is that will it be possible to deal with the problems in the municipality, i.e., poor management, poor staff performance, maladministration, corruption, cadre deployment, council operating around party politics? Will these can be dealt with, or is the answer is we hope rather than anything happening? Ernest?
Okay, so the short answer there is, remember I made a statement a while ago, we have to balance the power. That in essence allows us as councillors to hold the officials accountable. That's the first part, all right? And that's what residents need to remember when they go to the polls. If we continue to vote for the ANC, we are continuing to vote for a problem child in this whole story. You take down the power. No, hold on. They go 40% now. They're not 40% in eThekwini. Very big disparity there, and that's what the listeners need to remember.
Well, you've got to remember that in 2026.
Yeah,
we'll be dealing with the programs going forward.
Thank you. Now, can it be dealt with? Yes, it can.
You're going to hurt them at the polls, you say?
Well, I don't know about that. If people,
so you need a completely new council to make those changes
yes,
at the management
exactly.
level.
Competent councillors. And MTIs and myself disagree on a lot of things, but we'll agree on this. And we saw it. I think you saw it in trading services. You have councillors who don't even know how to read the agenda in front of you. Whether it's one or two, I'm not.
All they do is looking forward to the chow lunchtime.
There we go. Well, not even that glamorous anyway. But the reality is that I'm glad that Hassan touched on it, because he's literally re-emphasizing what I said, I think, for the last two meetings. If you have an effective, strong political will, okay, I'm going to make it short this time. If you have strong political will that has a desire to bring the change, instill the KPIs, if you have stopped this acting head nonsense, all right, put in people who are competent, that have the educational background, and that actually have experience in the field, and are not afraid to go down to grassroots level after I've given an instruction and follow up on the work.
Does this council have the courage to get rid of your city manager who's alleged to be corrupt? There's a whole lot of issues on him, together with his DCMs and his management staff.
I don't see why not.
That's a question I raised.
I don't see why not.
But why haven't they acted?
Well, you can't.
My listeners are asking me the question. You're asking the councillors, they can't give the answer because their hands are tied.
Well,
Those in control.
The onus is
because currently the ANC together with a couple of other parties are running a Tikwani municipality, right?
But the burden
and the
of
mayor
proof
came
comes
in
out there.
and his hands are tied. He's meeting various ratepayer associations with Tabani and Yowase speaker, making promises. Can't get the officials to deliver. So people attending these ratepayer meetings, making demands, making suggestions, they go back. Their officials are saying, don't touch us. We rely on this livelihood of these high salary packages. We're staying in Lalusha, Mshlanga, and all these places. You can't touch us. We're untouchable. We're full-time employed. Samu and Imatu will come for you.
There's nobody
so
who's
it's
untouchable.
really a challenging task to achieve what you're saying.
But that's right. That's the challenge to
Ramaphosa. You come
Ramaphosa.
into section 139, which becomes inevitable.
Yunus,
you can come in quickly.
Just to come in on the exact same topic, and maybe to cover what you asked Hassan about that we pay rates, right? What we need to really get at here, right, is that in 2007 we had a rate amendment policy, which changed rating value of property from PQ to property value, right? The one thing that we need to understand about government is that you can't bring change tomorrow unless you topple government and you change it completely. But you've got to have an idea and an ideology and bring change in terms of lobbying for something, right? What we are saying is this, is that if you come into a certain area and if rates are a certain value, then that should be proportioned to that area. And services should be delivered in terms of 10% of what rates it collects. Now, what we need to remember, within the operational budget of the city, 75% of it comes from ratepayers. However, we've got 595 informal settlements in the city. And I need you to apply your mind to this. And it's been something that's been troubling me. 595 informal settlements, which uses up 46% of our 300 million rand water per month, right? If they're using 46% of that water, it's called non-revenue water. But if the ratepayers alone pay 75% of the operational expenditure, who is paying for that water? Understand what I'm saying, right? Now, the question I raise, you always say, let's go backwards. Let's go back to 2006 election. And let's look at the constitution of council and how many councillors were where and in which wards those councillors were, right? And then let's go from there and count how many informal settlements were there then? 123, okay? And then in which wards did those numbers increase? How did it urbanize? And where is service delivery failing? Because I challenge you today. Go into Amlazi Ward 83. Tell me there's no service delivery. Go into ANC wards and see where there's no service delivery. And go into certain wards where it's generally minorities, there's no service delivery, but there's massive urbanization. And there are certain political parties with more seats. Ask yourself these questions and analyze it. And think about what's happening within the city. Our areas need to be really understood in terms of what is there for politics and what is truly there to deliver services within our area. The ratepayers associations is essential at this time. Understand how do informal settlements get electricity? Is the councillor not involved in getting them electricity? Why are they getting the electricity? Who allows these informal settlements to be there? Why was nothing said when a particular councillor was there and that land was free, and then informal settlements moved in. Where was SMU then? Where were all these people? You understand? So now we've got an entire community that supersedes the numbers of our current community that used to be here in 2006, that live here, and we provide services in terms of CSW, 5 kilowatts electricity free per month, and water free per month. At whose cost? So
Some
before
very,
you
very
get into the
important,
politics of things,
no, some very, very
understand the
important
political
comments
climate.
being made. I think, Imtiaz has started the discussion, which is very important, because I
Sure.
recall that the vacant land in these various urban areas, the city's human settlement department was asked to, provide, sort of security in those areas, particularly vacant land belonging to council, to avoid invasion of informal settlements, which they failed to do so. Politicians encourage people to go into those areas, and a lot of them up and
The mayor.
basically in the urban areas where there's predominantly minority communities.
Yeah.
That's a debate for another day in terms of human settlements, the informal settlements, etc. We're going to have that discussion. Time has run out, Ernest. I'm going to give you 1 minute just to wrap up.
All right. With that, what I was going before MTS jumped in, with the political will that we have, all right, and I said again, touching it, this is why I like this man. We have 33 billion that is owed to our city, all right, especially to our cluster. That's electricity, water, rates, taxes that need to be recouped. Because if we want to do the infrastructure turnaround that we're talking about, the estimates are 120 billion to do water alone. You're already sitting at 30% of the value if you recoup 1 year's outstanding monies, and that it can be done. But the reality is that's why the residents and ratepayers need to come out and eventually say, we're not going to give any of you a full grain of this. You have to work together to hold everybody accountable and be able to hold these officials who, by the way, I reemphasize the point, when we voted 10, 15 years ago, we put those people in there because of cadre deployment. That's where your KPIs come into it. And only an effective council, that if we want to get away from the 139, that's when the majority, 80, 90%, including the ANC, need to decide what they are going to do.
Thank you, Ernest. An interesting discussion. I'll conclude by reading out some of the comments that came in from our listeners, and we'll wrap up. Salams to Brother Yunus Sacoor Sahib, our listeners and the Al Ansar team. Re-service delivery. When local municipalities changed hands post-1994, it was obvious that more staff would be required to handle the increase in number of areas previously not serviced by most municipalities. You touched on that, Imtiaz. However, it is apparent that some municipalities were cutting staff budgets while contracting out certain tasks like checking and adjusting water pressure, etc. Now staff look at this and say, well, they cannot give us a decent increase, but they have money to pay contractors for this. That's Frank from Piemberg. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Yunus. Is the Israel embassy still open, and are our ulama putting pressure on our government for sanctions, including pressurizing US, UK, etc. for an arms embargo? Our government can use SADC or the AU. It's commendable, their case at the ICJ, but that seems to be put at bay with the arrest warrants. Please comment. Shukran for opportunity to express my opinions. I mean, we'll touch on that particular subject sometime next week. Salam, brother. Our Muslim shop owners give beggars money on Thursdays. They must stop, cause it becomes like a hello at homes. They get drugged and don't even go for Jummah namaz. So sad. Then they say GV clothes, they sell it for drugs and not for their families. Salams, I agree with the speaker. I have first-hand experience with the mess of Msunduzi municipality. I applied for indigent rebate. They passed it for 2 months, sent me an updated invoice. I paid it, never been arrears. Due to them not balancing of their books, they came on a Sunday morning, put in stop washer, cut my water due to the rebate. No water since then. After hundreds of calls and emails and airtime, they acknowledge their mistake. They then come at night, take off the washer, but all that comes through is air and no water up till now. I'm not winning with them and don't know what to do anymore. I'm making so much of sabr being a single Muslim female with no assistant, just doesn't know what to do. This is what we've been chatting about. Salams. So why are we paying so much of electricity, no rebate for pensioners? So people are complaining, they're listening to the program. They do realize that we have a tremendous amount of challenges. It is abundantly clear that our personnel are not delivering in the municipalities. It is abundantly clear that corruption and maladministration has cost this government and municipalities a lot of money at the expense of service delivery. It is apparent that councillors' hands are tied because they're being dictated by the mafia, as well as, people wanting employment for doing nothing. 2026 elections are coming up. This particular program will continue discussions, will continue exposing maladministration, corruption, and minimal service delivery. We will invite councillors. Officials are scared to come in this program because they don't know how to answer. And I think at the end of the day, this is our objective, is to expose any kind of inefficiencies that take place and ensure that people receive value for money for the rates they pay, because even tenants are paying rates in one form or the other. I thank our guests for joining us this evening. Hassan, you always quite to the point on your financial assessment. Imtiaz, alhamdulillah, we thank you for giving us some very important tips on security, but we couldn't cover it in full. We ran out of time. And also some very pertinent issues on the local government administration and your role as a councillor. And you've answered some of the concerns that our ratepayers are raising. Ernest, as usual, shukran for joining us together with your team. You're welcome anytime to give us an update on what's happening in the municipality. We didn't have much chance to chat on water curtailment. A lot of the people are smiling because the water hasn't been cut. The pressure may be slightly dropping. But be rest assured, listeners, that the city hasn't got a plan how to deal with the curtailment. So for as long as they don't have a plan, you'll have your water supplies. Your pressure may not be as good, but your water supply will be still around, because with all this rains, there's enough water in the dams. And as Brother Imtiaz pointed out, a lot of money is going towards the supply of free water to certain areas at the expense of the ratepayer. So why shouldn't we get a decent water supply? On that note, I'd like to conclude, as our Mufti Ibrahim Smith mentioned, that Allah is in control of the world. We have to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Muslims, we have to keep up with our salah. We have to keep up with our good amals. As the Al Ansar Foundation, our objective is to provide humanitarian aid and support to our citizens in whatever way and form. We continue to do that. And we continue to provide very important information in our programs every Wednesday, because this is a forum in which we talk about, news in focus, service delivery issues, crime, and other topical subjects worldwide. So if the listeners have any interesting subject they want us to talk about, please feel free to do so. Last week, I met a listener who suggested that when they land in our airports, the problems of landing, the delays in dealing with immigration, the biometrics, etc., is becoming a huge problem. So we will cover that subject and many other requests to cover other subjects. On that note, that brings us to the closure of this evening's program. I thank our listeners for joining us throughout the country. And inshallah, we will have a chat next Wednesday again. Until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The Al Ansar Foundation, Dawah, Tarbiyah, and Education, establishing the foundations of Islamic civilization in South Africa.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون وقال تبارك وتعالى اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون وقال تبارك وتعالى ولا تكن من الغافلين ودعا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في بداية شهر رجب اللهم بارك لنا في